Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and today I'm showing you a build that shouldn't really be a build and shouldn't really be something that anyone does, and that is Chainhook. The main reason behind that is Chainhook just feels kind of shit, and after playing with it for an entire character, there are a few main reasons as to why that feels shit that I think maybe I've narrowed down, but ultimately this is a skill that I tested when it first came out just a little bit and thought, wow, that doesn't feel good, and then never really looked at again. But this time around I've more or less been forced into it, as it seemed to be a popular suggestion as to one of the things to punish me for reaching a certain threshold in a sponsorship sort of goal. And Chainhook was a common theme as to a build that seems like it shouldn't really be played, so hey, make it work. And we're going to go ahead and try. And what I've done here is made a Raider that is full cold conversion, so it's 100% fizz into cold conversion using a Saviour and then just a few little nice pieces of gear, because I'm going a bit more investment than I usually would, or I'm a bit more happy to invest than I usually am, since this isn't a build I expect anyone would want to play in the end. In the end, what's really happening is Saviour is carrying our build as kind of filling in the gaps of how shit this skill sometimes feels. So as far as I can tell, Saviour makes Chainhook feel semi-playable. And one of the problems that Chainhook really has is the initial chain that flies out doesn't seem like it's getting scaled by anything. So we fly out this single chain and then it chains you towards the enemy, and it's got this sort of like delay lag period. I figured maybe I can overcome that with lots of attack speed, and we're going a Raider and frenzies and all that. It doesn't really seem to be the case. I don't think in the past 90 levels I've gotten any faster at throwing out that initial chain, and in a world where standing still for 0.4 of a second can get you destroyed by 100 monsters, that's really bad news. So you are left in this sort of dead zone of attacking sometimes, where if you're a little bit too close to the enemies, you will just stand there and die while throwing out a hook. So you have to stand fairly far back or really up close. If you're really up close, you'll be hitting them with this shockwave attack of Chainhook, and then not actually chaining, and you can actually kill monsters quickly. And if you're far enough away, you can throw out your chain a little bit slower, but you're far enough away from safety and then fly in and do your damage. Whereas if you're just in the middle sort of range, you might die because it just is too close, but still takes a while to get there, if that makes sense. So scaling the initial chain just doesn't seem to feel like it happens, and that's kind of why you don't really feel any better in progressing this build. The other thing is that you can just miss entirely. So you throw out your chain hook, and if you hit something, then you'll fly into it. If you don't hit something, you just stand there and you've wasted half a second doing your chain hook ability, because it doesn't fly you to the next spot. So you can just completely whiff an enemy and it just hits the ground and nothing happens. And that can happen if you're just like slightly off of clicking the enemy. So there is no general, or there isn't a very large general spot that you can click on an enemy or near an enemy that will activate the fly-in phase. You can, a lot of the times, when just you've only got a few enemies there, you will miss in between a few of them and then just stand there doing nothing. And that feels pretty fucking bad. So it kind of feels like a charged dash is what we established, but one that doesn't do the travel phase unless you actually click on something, for example. So you stand there, you throw out your charge dash, but if you haven't clicked on something or hit an enemy at the end of the dash, then you don't move. And that feels pretty bad. So now that we've established all of that, hey, we're kind of making Chainhook work either way. It does feel kind of bad at times, but it's also kind of fun at times. If you can chain from one enemy to the next and do it sort of smoothly, and you've got your Saviour clones going off, and they're like aimbot versions of you because they never miss, and they know exactly what distance to stand apart to hit things, they actually can go off themselves and be a pretty good addition to your build and good farming for this type of a character. Once all that's going and we've got our frenzies and berserk, The damage here is looking somewhat respectable as well. Single target and damage on chain hook hasn't really seemed like it's ever been lacking. It's just the play style of the skill, which does feel kind of shit. But we're still making a build out of it, and I think it might end up taking on all content. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm trying to pull out all the stops here. It's a Raider with like 5k life, Abyssus, Saviour, 470 DPS sword, I only just made. Some pretty okay attack-based damage stuff, and trying to make cluster jewels work for me as well. But we're pushing the limits of the amount of defense you can have to compensate with offense, and ultimately I will try out a few other skills in this build as well, and then just probably be sad about how much better they are than this skill. So it's just kind of a showcase of a skill that looked cool on paper, but ultimately I think needed a lot of work before it was fully pushed out there. And I do want to show you guys, you know, how this thing can potentially work, even if it takes a lot of work gear-wise and playtesting. But ultimately, I think it can kind of work. It's just, would you really want to play it? Probably not. We'll have to wait and see for some of the final results, and just compare it to a few other skills and see how much worse it feels. Because I'm kind of used to it at this point, but I know that it's definitely not the smoothest feeling skill. So let me just jump into how I've built it so far, and then in the next video we'll do some endgame. Here is our current character, level 89 Raider, called Hooking for Money. Chain hooking, money, did it because paid and incentives, etc. So chain hook itself, as you can see right here, doesn't have any additional base damage. It does have some interesting stuff in the form of radius per rage, and it generates some rage if the skill hits an enemy. At this point, as a rage generator, it's kind of shit. It doesn't really achieve anything compared to other rage generators that are far more effective right now in the form of war cries and just stacking rage through clicking. That's much more effective than this thing, but it is a little bit of additional rage. And in the end, it gives you an additional 10 radius per 50 rage for the skills area, and then with the helmet chant you get an additional 4 radius. So we do have a lot of radius, and then you try and get a bit of area, but can't really justify it too well with anything aside from pulverize, and pulverize makes things a bit slower. So I am trying pulverize from time to time, but making things slower feels kind of bad. So what this thing actually looks like, as you can see, is this. This is our attack speed. No matter how much attack speed we get, this is roughly what I'm doing before fighting an enemy, and it feels kinda just jank. And if you hit something, it'll fly you over to that spot, and then you try and hit something again. But if you're right next to an enemy, you just attack under like a regular, I don't know, an up-close lacerate, let's call it, something like that. So that's the idea for single target. You end up like double hitting, you get much closer, and then it deals some okay damage in single target. And we are building around Saviour so that we have double clones, and I think the idea here is that it essentially needs these double clones so that you have extra tools of defense and offense at your disposal. They're going around having mind of their own and covering up the gaps in this janky build. But I did have some other ideas where you could maybe do like a Onigarashi Chieftain version with Herald of Ash stacking that does some overlap prolif, that sort of thing. And other than that, you'd be a pretty tanky character, I would have hoped. But yeah, we went with the Saviour and a Raider version that does the frenzies, the dodge and movement speed portion. So I've got a lot of dodge, a lot of movement speed, and some decent defense, even though it's only 5k life at the moment. I'll try and work my way up to about 5.5k, but some decent defense and some decent movement speed and versatility and all of that. And I am trying to go full cold conversion, which is through here, the Hatred Watcher's Eye, and a 23% at the moment cold convert here, so I'm a little bit off of the full convert, but the idea is to go full cold. And the main idea behind full cold is to A, freeze things, which is pretty good, but B, I just then played an Impale character, so I didn't want to play Impale again straight away. Possibly a Berserker Impale with an explosion chest is probably going to be the best way to play something like this, still with the Saviour, but ultimately put in any other skill and chances are you'll do a lot better. So what we've got is just Chain Hook attached to Fortify, Inspiration, Ruthless, LE damage with attacks, and close combat. Close combat is one I kind of want to replace, but kind of hard to get a 6th off color without a Varici bench at the moment. And the way I got these off colors is you go to this bench here and type in sockets, and then go from, start out with 2 reds, so put 2 reds here, and then go from 2 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 3 until you hit 3rd red, 3 to 4, 3 to 4, 3 to 4 until you hit another red, 4 to 5 until you hit another red. That might take, you know, 700 jewelers or something, and then from 5 to 6 until you hit whatever color you want. Usually you want to leave it so that it can be a green, so if it's going to be 5 off, no big deal, and just leave the last one as a green because it's going to take you 350 jewelers to get to that last one. If you want 6 off colors, it is a bit more expensive because it's going to take you potentially thousands of jewelers, but that's how you do a nice clean 5 off color for something like this. And then we just linked it up, and that's what we're currently running with. But it's an okay chest as well, just tack crit, because you have real low crit to start with here. And I slammed it after getting a result, so I chaos spammed this thing, then put on an exalt to get lightning res, and it ended up a pretty nice chest. We're then running a amulet that I chaos spammed that's got crit multi, fizz damage is extra cold, damage per frenzy, so it looks pretty nice, but doesn't do much better than a Pandemonious. However, it does give me a slight bit of stats and life, so slightly better than Pandemonious in that regard. Just try and get some attack speed, life, conversion on a glove, so a spare prefix. We then got a belt that's just got some flask utility, bit of extra life and stuff, and then crafted my own thing. The Abyssal Socket in there has accuracy with Onslaught on kill, since I don't have Onslaught anywhere. My flask setup doesn't allow it right now. My Tailwind boots that I've used on plenty of characters, and then a foil that we crafted here. And with a couple of thousand alterations, a bunch of regals, a bunch of scours, it's pretty easy to reliably craft a 400 to 450 DPS foil, I think. So this one is a Warlord base, I think. Yep, Warlord base. And what you're looking for is the hybrid Warlord mod, so attack speed and physical damage. This is just a hybrid regular mod, and you basically just regal a lot of things. So you're going for tempered, flaring, the hybrid mods, the big fizz mods, the big attack speed mods, and then you regal and hopefully hit another mod. In this case, we started out with tempered and celebration, regaled something crap, and then went from beastcraft of suffix to prefix, and ended up hitting Reavers. So with these types of methods, you can pretty reliably craft decently sized foils. It just takes a bit of work and a lot of currency spam into them. And usually for me, that just means regaling a lot. And then of course the Abyssus. I'm not sure the Abyssus is strictly necessary. Damage seems pretty good otherwise, and it is making us squishier, but I wanted to start from the top with the damage and then go down if need be. So far, I think it's doing just fine. We see how we hold up in the Simulacrum, since I might feel a bit squishy, but like I said, got lots of dodge, got lots of evasion, fortifies and phasings and movement speeds and killing things quickly, so we might be fine anyway. And then I've just gone a Mark of the Elder so far with a Vermilion ring. I was just chaos spamming. I put like 1,000 chaos into Vermilion rings, even though I've already got a decent one here. I basically wanted one that could have non-channeling skills have minus mana costs, so that my mana doesn't feel shit when I miss. So that's why I made this one instead of this one. And I probably have to ditch the Mark of the Elder since I need accuracy in my build still. And this just isn't worth using since I can't get accuracy anywhere else at the moment. The cluster jewels I've gone with are mostly just Cold-Blooded Killer and Blanketed Snow. Happen to have some piece of shit here, doesn't really matter, but this is Cold Penetration. Then gone the usual Warcry stacking for lots of crit multi, some life leech, and the usual sort of stuff there. And then up here as well, we've gone with Vengeful Commander to buff our hatred, Blanketed Snow once again for Cold Pen, and then the Warcry and life stuff, Warcry and life stuff. That's basically all about the build so far. You could probably put in any other skill, like a Frostblade, a Cyclone, and just have a much better build, but we're trying to make Chainhook work, and we'll see how that ends up later on when I do try out the other stuff, and I'll give you more of an update next video about this character, and how I could recommend building it if you wanted to do something a little bit different instead of chain hook. But you can definitely do chain hook if you want, similar sort of thing. It's probably going to be better as a berserker and impale, but this is the best I can do on this type of guy while trying to be kind of fresh with a cold convert build. And that's where we're at. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and kind of the skill, build, all of that. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.